All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome
Hello.
back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 356 of the Health Detective Podcast. This is getting ridiculous. We're going to have to plan out a 400th episode special or something. And if you count the lunch and learns and the other things we do, technically, I guess we're past that, but it's still cool. These are interviews that go for the actual count that we use for our number. We have a repeat guest today. Actually, this is probably her third time on, if I'm not mistaken, because I think you did a lab analysis with
Oh,
us
yeah.
as well.
hmm
And every time she's been a hit, every time she brings the fire. And so we're going to have a great conversation today. Before we get into that, I just have one announcement. And you guys only have a few days left to get the discount for this. So I hope you take us up on it if you're able. But I wanted to shout out the closest thing to an FDN conference that we have had since 2019. And that is the Hicks event in San Diego, California. It's going down October 17th through the 19th, 2024. It's right on Mission Bay. If you've never been to San Diego and you don't know what I just said, just look up Mission Bay, San Diego, do the street view or whatever the 3D thing is so that you can see it. It's beautiful. It's heaven on earth. They don't get storms really. They don't have anything really bad happen. Maybe an earthquake every 100 years, but who's counting? Like a serious one, kind of scary, but the other 99 years are awesome. So we will all be there. There's going to be the majority of the staff there and about, I think, 100 FDNs they expected in attendance, and then another 200 people that are just in the functional medicine community. So this is specifically for people who want advanced functional medicine training. And also what this conference does that's unique is there's going to be a lot of emphasis on the business side. So whether you are freshly graduated from FDN or a health coaching certification and you're trying to learn about this, or you're someone that is at, the six-figure mark and you're looking to hire that first person or scale, how do you take this even farther? This conference will be able to help you. It's Hicks, HIX-live.com. The code is all caps HDP, like Health Detective Podcast, HDP 200 at checkout. It gives you $200 off either ticket. I know everyone is at very different places during this time in this economy. Like some people are crushing it and we're like, how are they doing that? Others are trying to make it work. I get it. So if you are one of those people that happen to be fortunate enough to be crushing it, I highly recommend getting the VIP ticket because I think there are still some left at the time of us doing this podcast. And that gives you access to the Sunset Cruise with 100 people. It's going to be awesome. And Sunset Cruises are just, I feel like they're worth more than the extra $200 and you're getting $200 off anyway. So it works out. We hope to see you there. That's hicks-live.com, HDP 200 at checkout. And I will read our guest's bio today and we'll jump right into this because we were joking beforehand. Her and I are never shy of words or short for words. So Becca Kyle is a certified FDN practitioner and board certified holistic health practitioner as well. She helps entrepreneurs and professionals strategically reverse their burnout and support their nervous systems so they can stop wasting time, energy, and money trying to solve their health problems and start living vibrant lives. She has extensive training in gut health, hormones, adrenal function, wellness genetics, toxins, histamine intolerance, and blood work. Becca uses functional labs to create health rebuilding roadmaps for people to follow based on individual healing opportunities and biochemistry that empowers them to fast track bringing their bodies back into balance. Her bachelor's degree is in public relations, and she has a master's degree in education, which means she loves educating, guiding, and connecting with people so they can learn how to take extravagant ownership of their health and wellness. Well, you just love adding certifications and degrees, my friend. Welcome back to the show.
I'm a serial, a person who loves to learn. I'll never stop learning, and I thoroughly enjoy continuing my education.
Well, from the FDN perspective, and I guess any probably place that offers these types of certifications, that's about as good as it can get for us. The people that actually do it, right? They don't just spend all the time learning; they actually work with people. But when you don't want to be the person that just works with individuals and never upgrade your knowledge. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. So. Let's dive into this. Obviously, people can hear your full story on the first episode that we did. I shouldn't say obviously, but that is typically how we interview someone for the first time. We dive deep into that. Are we able to maybe give to the degree that you want, a summarized version of how you got into this work? Because it wasn't because you were bored, that's for sure.
Oh, no, I was never bored. I'm never bored. But I think like many of us, I had a lengthy, random health history that nobody could solve, nobody could help me with. I was a medical mystery for much of my life, starting really when I was a toddler. I was tested for everything under the sun, leukemia, lupus, you name it. I was tested for it and nobody could figure me out. Fast track into my early 20s, did my first food sensitivity test. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then really was able to hone in on some dietary shifts that needed to be made. Fast track a little bit more. I had a lot of fertility issues that I received help for with regards to my genetics. That was my first kind of foray into health and wellness genetics. And I was like, okay, I love this stuff. I need to be a part of this. Always been interested in health and wellness, and the true deep support, life-changing support I received from the functional health community really spurred me into wanting to be able to help other people with this. And fast forward a little bit more, I did the FDN program, fell in love with the concept, really wanted access to the labs. That was huge for me when I was researching different programs. And to me, the magic is in the labs, being able to see those biochemical stressors, healing opportunities, was what just fascinated me. And now here we are today, and I'm still on my own health journey. Like I discovered a couple of years ago that I've got some tick-borne illness issues that really connected the lifelong dots that no one was able to connect for me. So I'm still working on myself, helping everybody else. And it's a true passion and pleasure and honor, really, to be able to support people really taking ownership over their health. I think so many people give their power away in the traditional medical community. It's time to take your power back. So I get to help people with that. And it's so much fun.
Well, Becca, thanks for the transparency with that, because no one needs to be perfect with this to help others. That's for darn sure. And also, I think that's one of the cool things about getting to be an FDN or even a client of an FDN is you can kind of take this as far as you want to go. And we also acknowledge that if we're on this earth long enough, other things are going to come up. I think you know this because I talked about this in the graduate group for sure. You know, I've been doing great for years. And then my wife and I were in a moldy apartment last year. And I just... It's not that I would wish this on myself, but I kind of deserved it in a sense, because I was the person, I never said it out loud, but I was always the person that was like, is this really that big of a deal? I heard people talking about it all the time. I'm like, they must not be doing the lifestyle stuff right. That's where I really got a dose of humility for that one, because I'd already been doing the lifestyle stuff right for 7 years. And it still got me. So one, I thanked God that this did not happen to me when I was actually sick, because I was like, I don't know where I would be. But two, that happened. And guess what? I have the tools and community now to handle that. And so, you know, the journey of health is not only something that's like an onion where we keep peeling back stuff. Even if we get to a stable place, again, if you're on this earth long enough, it's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be new things that come up. What happens when someone we love passes away and we have to deal with the trauma and stress of that? There's things that happen. So it's equipping people and ourselves with the tools necessary to deal with these things as they come up in life. And it's very empowering. Like you said, people lose their power. It's so empowering to know you could hit me with anything, and I still feel like I have a very good chance to be able to fight it with the people I'm connected to and the things I've learned, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, and things keep coming up with mold illness. So much of the past few years, I'm seeing it over and over and over. We found it in our HVAC units in the fall. And so it's not always obvious. It's not like, oh yeah, I know my pipe burst, or, oh, I know, you know, my roof leaked. It's not an obvious thing all the time. But I feel like in the last few years, I've had more and more of my clients test positive for mold and mycotoxins in their bodies. And it has been quite an interesting few years, and how I'm seeing how common of a hidden stressor mold can be. But yeah, it's like constantly filling up that tool belt with new tools to be able to not only help yourself, your own family, your friends, your clients. It's just fun. I kind of think of myself also as a little bit of a detective, you know, a doc connector. And I've had so many of my clients literally sob on their results and recommendation sessions, because all of a sudden they finally make sense. And they're not a mystery anymore. And not only do they make sense, like an deep understanding of what's driving their symptoms, but they're not stuck. If you know what's going on, if you know what the healing opportunities are, you can create a plan to, to fix them. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, and let's dive into that. So we're talking about combating burnout today. This might sound like a funny question at first, but I think as someone who works with these clients, you'd understand why I'm asking, because we're on YouTube. This is public. People find us that this is their first time listening to us. They don't know what FDN is or any of this. So can we define burnout? Because I think especially I don't want to call out anyone, but in the exercise community,
Mm-hmm.
there's like this idea that you can't be burnt out. You'd have to be doing so much. It's not real. You're just like overtraining or something. That's not what we're talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
let's define burnout from what you mean with it.
My approach to burnout, or how I define burnout, is, typically it comes from a combination of acute stressors and long-term chronic stress. We can dive into kind of what's filling up people's stress buckets here in a little bit, but it's really where the nervous system starts to malfunction. Our adrenal function, our HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal axis, it's not meant to constantly be bombarded with chronic stress. It's meant to deal with an acute stressor, come back into a balance. Deal with an acute stressor, come back into balance. But that's not what people are dealing with. We're dealing with acute stressors, job loss, car accident, injury, sick parent, whatever it might be. But then we're also dealing with chronic stress, whether it's the state of the world or finances or whatever. So we have this kind of combination of things going on. Then you add to the mix, toxins, maybe standard American diet, all of these other things that create stress in the body. So people's stress buckets are full and overflowing. We're just being bombarded with stressors. And our nervous systems weren't meant to handle that long term. They just weren't. And so things start to malfunction. So maybe you initially have high cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And then the body's like, I'm tired. And it starts to decrease your cortisol output, or maybe it's you still have high cortisol, but you don't have that counterbalance of the DHEA to mitigate the effects of that high cortisol. So when I say like burnout, typically, as far as what does that look like in somebody, that looks like chronic fatigue, maybe tired but wired. Like any little thing causes you to freak out, stress-wise, you don't have capacity or resiliency to deal with stressors, cognitive decline, poor memory, processing. You can't really learn, you're having trouble maybe learning new topics, new strategies, salt cravings, super common, stubborn weight, sleep issues, huge when it comes to burnout. You are so exhausted, you lay down, finally I get to go to sleep. And then you're like, boop, wide awake. Hormone imbalance, PMS, low libido, anxiety, depression, and then a lot of gut issues. Chronic stress completely can damage your gut immune system, really create this terrain or environment that makes you more susceptible to bacteria, fungus, parasites, you name it. So when I say burnout, I'm thinking the way I look at it is systemically. What's filling up your stress bucket that's causing an imbalance in your body's ability to respond to and handle stress. So most of my one-to-one clients are very successful in a lot of areas in their life. Like they're killing it at work, killing it at home, but and on the path to that success, they have burnt the candle at both ends. They have been go, 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 go. They've had horrible work-life balance. And they get to that successful place and they're exhausted. They're irritable. They got IBS. They got whatever. They have periods that make them want to just run away screaming every month, whatever it is. And it can present differently in everybody. Gotta love those individual differences there. But it's a systemic connected imbalances in stressors and your nervous system, basically. That was a long definition, but that's it.
But I actually think it's worth defining it like that, because to me, I totally understand, especially as someone who's super driven like you, I can actually understand how the hyper-driven people who haven't experienced chronic illness yet, thank God, I don't want them to experience it,
Right.
But they don't get it. They're like, oh, it's a thing of working harder or whatever. But it's like, well, no, there is an objective thing here. It's really when the things I am trying to do in my daily life, or even worse, the things that I need to do, like a job, family, whatever, to get through my daily life, I can no longer recover from that. That is either leading to burnout or you are in burnout. If I can no longer recover from the stuff I'm doing every single day, again, it's one thing to be able to do that for 2-3 days a week,
Right.
but you can't do that 7 days a week. And I'll never forget, I almost wish I could have been on the podcast. I'm not big enough for that, but I saw a clip of, it was Joe Rogan with Michaela Peterson, which is Jordan Peterson, the psychologist's daughter, who was super sick, had hip replacement in her teenage years. She was sick as a dog with autoimmune conditions. And I remember they argued on the clip that I watched, because she was saying, dad was so sick, because Jordan Peterson was sick as well. He couldn't exercise. And then Joe stops him as the bro that he is, right? He's like, no, he could exercise. Could he get up and walk to the fridge? And she's like, well, yeah. He's like, well, no, he could exercise. And I'm like, you know what? You guys are arguing the same thing here, and there's just a little bit of disconnect. What I would have said if I was there, and I like to believe this, but maybe if I was on the biggest show in the world, I would have gotten nervous too. I would have
Right.
said, you know what? Sure, he could have forced himself if he had a gun to his head to get up and run. The issue is if he did that like over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to work. He's not going to be able to run more. That's what Joe's thinking. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
if you just do it, you're going to get better. No, people that we're talking about, they don't get better. They get worse. And now the mile time gets longer. Or if they're
Mm-hmm.
bench pressing, the weight's going down. And if you haven't experienced that, well, then again, good. But
Yeah.
that's real. I felt that myself at like 21 years old. It's
Me
crazy.
too.
You're doing this stuff and it's not working.
Me too. And I was told like, just get out and move, go for a walk. Well, and I love walking. Walking is one of my favorite mental health strategies personally. But I had seasons of my life where I struggled to put one foot in front of the other. Like it was massive effort just to do that. Or that, 3:00 came around and I had to go to bed. Like I was not functioning. Like it's just such a deep seated debilitating fatigue that can take over. And if you haven't experienced that, it's really hard to, especially if we're kind of like a bro dude, it can be really hard to understand it and empathize with it because unless you've experienced it, it just doesn't make sense, right?
Yes.
Like, but it can absolutely be debilitating. I mean, I've been so non-functional on the floor, like just everything, all the symptoms. And I'm also been on the other side of that. And so I know it's possible, but I also feel like having experienced that is that it gives me a great deal of empathy and understanding for like when I have clients who are like, nobody believes me that I feel like this. I'm like, I believe you because, I've experienced it. And I don't think you always have to experience something to believe it. But, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, especially kind of in the fitness world.
Yeah. Well, Becca, let's dive into some of the causal factors because I think we can separate from the get-go. Anyone that's working 16 hours a day and sleeping 6 hours or 5 hours because they're on the grind. Again, and I know Becca very well, at least from an internet sense. So trust us when we say we are the people that, at least in theory, we get you. We would love to do that in some sense, but of course we understand how someone's going to burn out. Then I think what gets very scary for people is like, well, wait, I'm trying to do the right things, or I'm not living any worse than anyone else, and I'm still feeling this way. What on earth is causing that type of stuff? Let's dive into those things.
Yeah, well, I think most people know what their emotional stressors are. A job, a relationship, like a sibling issue, the state of the world that's just stressing you out, right? Most people know what their physical stressors are. Like I injured my shoulder last year, or if you break your arm, or if you're in a car accident. What most people don't know is what their biochemical stressors are. So we have like emotional, we have physical, and we have biochemical. And when we think about like what's when we ask them, I ask them all the time, I say, what's filling up your stress bucket? I love bucket analogies. They're simple, they make sense to people. And they can say, oh yeah, I'm having to take care of my aging parents, or me and my boss it's a toxic work environment, or I was in a car accident and I broke my leg and I couldn't walk. Right. We know people get that. It makes sense to them. But when I say, do you suspect you've had, you've got toxins? Do you suspect you've got pathogens? Do you suspect you've got neurotransmitter imbalances or hormone imbalances? People just look at me like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? So it's these hidden stressors, I feel like, that are often the source of causing that stress bucket to overflow. So maybe they're working on their emotional stressors. They're like, nope, kick that relationship to the curb. Nope, got a new job. Nope, went to therapy with my mom and we're dealing with our relationship. I turned off the news. I don't watch it anymore. Right? They're maybe actively working on those emotional stressors. Maybe they're going to acupuncture and chiropractic and physical therapy and working on their physical stressors. But so often what's filling up their stress bucket that people have no idea could be mold toxicity. It could be like, you're not absorbing any of the nutrients you're eating. Like maybe you're eating this beautiful, gorgeous, nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory diet, but it's not you are what you eat, it's you are what you absorb. So are you actually absorbing those nutrients? Do you have pathogens in your gut that are noshing on your B vitamins before you get to use them, right? So there's a lot of those biochemical stressors that people just aren't aware of. And you wouldn't be aware of. Like, I don't know anything about like fixing my car. I'm not trained in that, right? Like I would like to be, but I'm not. I think it's cool. But so many people are experts in their field, whether it's marketing, or maybe they're a dentist, or maybe they're a social media manager, whatever they may be, they're experts in this field. So they feel really knowledgeable. Like, I get stuff. I'm a smart person, but I can't look at you, Evan, and say like, oh, I know what's going on in your gut. No, I can't. Like, that's where the functional lab tests come in. And that it allows us to really assess what those hidden biochemical stressors are, which are almost always one of the main reasons for people's they're burning out. And you know what? If you have a longstanding wild relationship with your mom or whatever your emotional stressors are, that can take years and years and years and years, right? You've got something like a parasite or mold toxicity, or you got to, work on your gut. If we know what's going on, we can typically fast track. Now, when I say fast track, I'm not talking about overnight or 30 days, but, maybe healing your relationship with your mom is a 10-year process, but we can work on, really balancing out gut function, getting you absorbing your food, like think 6 months versus 10 years, right? And so when we can empty out that stress bucket with those biochemical stressors, it gives somebody resiliency and capacity to be able to then better handle those emotional stressors, those physical stressors.
That's one of my favorite things to watch in people, probably because it was interesting to watch in myself, how when I got physically healthier, it's not that mental stressors go away or emotional stressors go away, but people do not believe until they see it themselves that you will actually start to handle stuff better. Same situation, same quote unquote trigger, but it's almost like you're like, wow, I can handle that. And that's why I actually think it's always like the best lies are half true. What does the very much older generation say about my generation and younger is they're soft, right? And they don't actually have it that bad. I'm like, interesting. What if that was partially true? And what was really happening is they have less resilience because of these biochemical stressors to certain life stressors. I think that might be it. I think there's unique things that come with today's world. Social media is terrible. We don't need to emphasize that. Everyone knows it. No. But the point is, though, it's like, what if they are literally less resilient? And so they appear to be softer when in reality they're actually not. And I'm like, I think it's probably that. So when you, sorry.
No, go ahead. Okay. I was just agreeing with you. I was saying yes.
Gotcha. When you're utilizing these functional labs, so I know you've been doing this for a while. So just to specify, you might not be perfectly in alignment with the 5 foundational labs we sometimes talk about on this show. And we always say, if someone's an experienced practitioner, they might change things a little bit, but don't bend the rules until you actually know the rules. So let's talk about the main ones that you're using nowadays and that are pretty standard with your clients.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say, when we think of, I like to kind of view things as like a root cause versus like the why and the what. So something like the Dutch test is what I've used for hormones. I know there's like, that's kind of a more advanced test. I didn't start off using it, but I use it now and I love it for adrenal function and hormones. And I like to tell my clients, that's the what. What's going on with your stress response? What's going on with your hormones? What's going on with your adrenal function? What's going on with your HPA axis? And what shows up on everything else is the why, right? So that's going to be GI map, looking at your gut microbiome, bacteria, good pathogenic bacteria, parasites, digestive markers, recycling toxins. There's so many beautiful markers on there. It gives you a picture of what's going on in your gut. So that's total standard for what I do. Love looking at minerals and metals. So that's HTMA. So many people with chronic fatigue have significant mineral imbalances, and our bodies are electric. They're meant to work well. And when your minerals are not in good balance, you can kind of feel like a car with a dead battery when it comes to all things metabolism. That's weight, that's energy, that's adrenal function, thyroid function. Organic acids lab. Love it for all things fungal. We think we might have mold, couple the oat with the mycotoxins, we're going to know. Looks at things like C. diff, nutrients, neurotransmitters, methylation. So those would be my 3 favorite root cause: GI map, organic acids, HTMA. What are the biggest imbalances in your body? But I also love looking at when people are like, everything I eat, I just react to. Well, I like the Zoomers, the Fiber Wellness Zoomers for that. I also use genetics on a lot of people, because if you understand, this is not genetics like where you're from, ancestry, why your eyes are a certain color. I don't care about that.
Irish.
No, right. But it's what is think of your top 40 health and wellness genetics. So that's your predispositions for nutrient deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, detox capacity, neurotransmitter balance, foods. And if you know what your genetic blueprint is, you can honor that with lifestyle. You know, people, I think a long time was like, well, my granddad had heart disease, so I'm going to have heart disease. No, not necessarily. It's like flipping a light switch on and off. You cannot change your genes, but you can change how they express in the body. So, you know, looking at what's going on with your stress response and then what could be causing an imbalanced stress response on those other labs is just a lot of fun. And then, you know, every now and then, you know, we're like, I've got a lot of fertility clients or clients with fertility issues. And, you know, it's so many of them have high levels of environmental toxins, BPA, phthalates, glyphosate, all of these things, right? And so you know, I have my standard ones, and then situationally, I love being able to pull from some of these other types of labs that just give us, you know, more individual information. Or like someone who's like, I grew up on a farm. I'm like, okay, let's check out your environmental toxins, right? Or yeah, when I was little, you know, we had a roof leak and the whole carpet everywhere got wet. We tried to dry it off with fans, but let's check you out for mold, right? So, you know, I've been doing this a long time, but when I first started, it was only all foundational until I got really good at that. And then, you know, it was a matter of like, well, where's my interest? What problems am I seeing in my clients?
Yes.
Where can I further my education? Taking some advanced courses here and there, you know, learning new labs. And that's just part of that consistent continuing education. Like that's the beautiful thing about this industry. There will always be new studies. There will always be new labs. There will always be new breakthroughs. There will always be new connectedness that we get to learn. I mean, like what webinar do I get to listen to today? You know, I think it's just fascinating that I'll never know everything. And there's always something new to learn. And it's just the lab work it's like my kids are like, I'm hungry, I want supper. I'm like, but I'm looking at some lab work, you know. I'd rather analyze lab work than cook dinner any day. But you know, this whole having 3 boy children who are hungry thing, you know, have to cook for them. So.
Yes. I'd love to break some of these labs down more in depth, just because for those listening, they're going to want to know, like, all right, what would I maybe be missing out on if I didn't do this stuff? Because I think it's hugely important. And what's interesting is, well, I shouldn't say interesting, because these things end up being kind of a vicious cycle because, for example, you know, Becca mentioned how on mineral tests, you'll find people are very depleted. It's totally common, especially when you have someone with burnout. In fact, that's almost par for the course if they're dealing with burnout. But what's interesting is when your minerals are that deficient, that could keep you kind of in this state where you don't feel good. But the interesting part is they didn't get that way overnight. Like that wasn't necessarily the cause of feeling this way. It could be the chronic stress that led to that. So we find a lot of people, not always, but a lot of people that come to us as FDNs, they actually have made some changes. Like they are doing the dietary stuff, not perfectly, but they're living better than most people. And they're like, how do I still feel sick? And it's like, well, what most likely happened is all these things were going wrong originally. Then you got into this state, you tried to self-correct and you're wondering what's going on. And it's like these permanent things. I mean, permanent unless you do something about them. That you otherwise, like you said, would not know about unless you look into the biochemical, can become kind of an issue. I would say it's usually, not always, but usually very similar with gut pathogens. They got in because you were under chronic stress. So when you talk about like low minerals, like for the average person, what does that mean? And then how do we actually replenish those things if now we're kind of stuck at the depletion stage?
You know, so many of my clients are, it's on the HTMA, it's called it being a slow oxidizer. And that typically means that you have a loss of calcium, a loss of magnesium, and then your potassium and sodium are really low. You know, our adrenals need sodium, they need potassium, and they will burn through that. Every now and then, it's more common with my male client, and their sodium will actually be really high. And that is a stress response. That's telling us that their body is stressed out. So it becomes this kind of inverse relationship. You know, if you imagine a line with arrows going both ways, it's like the deficiencies can be caused by the stress, but then they make the stress worse, you know, and it just keeps going back and forth. It's kind of a chicken and egg situation. And when your minerals are depleted, especially those 4 main macro minerals, your calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium, it can throw off so many issues in the body. So it can impact thyroid function, adrenal function, metabolism. Like if someone's like, I'm doing all these things and I cannot lose weight. Let's check out your minerals. What's going on? Is your metabolism like completely slowed down? And Something like mold toxicity can drive up oxalate production. Oxalates can have an affinity to bind to your minerals, right? So something as simple as pathogens can impact minerals. And then if your minerals are not in balance, that can impact your gut terrain and make you more susceptible. So it's really all of these inverse relationships. We don't always know. In fact, we almost never know exactly what came first, and it doesn't matter because we address the body as a whole. My goal, as I'm sure every FDN's goal is to positively impact every cell, tissue, and organ in the body. When we work non-specifically, we can impact every part of the body. And so what I love about the HTMA test, it's a hair test, so it's non-invasive. First of all, some people are like, oh, I don't want to do a blood draw or whatever. You don't have to. And blood work, minerals, it doesn't tell us the whole story. It's a snapshot in time. Where are those minerals going when that blood draw was taken? We don't know. And so what I love about the HTMA, it's a 4-month average of your minerals, as well as telling us what heavy metals you're dealing with. If your macro minerals are not in balance, your body's naturally going to hang on to those metals. So people are like, I'm doing this hardcore heavy metal chelation. I'm like, please don't. One, it can be dangerous. It can make you actually sicker, but also the most gentle and effective way to support the body to release metals is to balance out those minerals. And so it can make a huge difference in your energy levels, metabolism, everything. And most people are extremely deficient in potassium and in magnesium. We need about 5,000 milligrams of potassium a day. And most people are not getting that in their diet. So it's a combination of let's see where you're maybe not eating as much of these minerals and foods. That's ideal. We're getting our nutrition from food. Are we absorbing the food, supporting digestion and absorption? And then a lot of minerals have these really great relationships with other minerals, with other nutrients. So it's really kind of this synergistic approach of not just I'm going to take some calcium and I'm going to take some potassium, but what are all the synergistic cofactors needed to make those minerals work in the body? So again, it's a systemic, multivariable approach. And I love starting with minerals often, when we think of why are my hormones imbalanced? Why am I having all these thyroid symptoms, but my thyroid blood work is in range, right? Well, let's check out your minerals. Minerals are so important for thyroid function. And let's say your potassium's low. Well, maybe your thyroid's cranking out the perfect amount of hormone, but that thyroid hormone is not going to get into cells the way it should be because potassium influences cell membrane permeability. Sure. Oh, breathe. Okay. I can talk about this a lot. I'm like, la, 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 la. And then I'm like, well, maybe in my head, I was just like, Becca, maybe you should stop right now.
The energy that you and I bring is kind of proof that this stuff works because, listen, it's not that I don't have bad days. I know you have your rough days too, but you can't really fake this, especially if you're in a legitimate state of burnout. So that's why it's always awesome talking to you. But I appreciate you breaking this down because it's kind of crazy to just think about how screwed up our soil is and how depleted we all are because the amount of electrolytes I supplement with nowadays, and then I feel good from it. It's not like I'm just doing it in la la la, hoping for the best. I can feel the benefit within usually 30 minutes of taking these things. But you think about it, it's not like our ancestors had or needed supplements with 1,000 milligrams of sodium in it or, 2,000 things of potassium. It's like, well, the depletion in the soil. So our food's not as good as it was before. And then we have these chronic stressors. So maybe, yes, thank God for most of us, not for everyone in this world, but for most of us, we don't have the stressors of, someone invading our town right now or, the tiger coming. Again, not everywhere, but here we don't worry about that.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge stressor, but it's like these chronic ones that are just over and over and over again. And arguably the body is better able to handle those major stressors every now and then versus the smaller ones that just don't stop
go away
all day, every day.
Yeah. Well, and we think about the quality of our food, like you said, starts with the quality of our soil. Our soil is so overused, over depleted. The farming practices are atrocious. The use of things like glyphosate, I had someone ask me the other day, why is everyone reacting to gluten now? Is that many people celiac? I'm like, no, it's some people aren't reacting to gluten, they're reacting to glyphosate. And then in order to make the plant itself receptive to the glyphosate, they're changing the plant. The plant is not what our grandparents were eating. And so even if you're eating organically grown, and you think you're getting this nutrient and stuff, the amount of nutrients in an apple today is not even close to what it was when our grandparents were we're, urine eyes ages. And so supplementing sometimes is necessary. Maybe sometimes you gotta you gotta eradicate a pathogen with some botanical herbs, right? But sometimes you have to supplement. It's supplementing your diet because we're not getting what we need from food. And if you take an electrolyte blend and you feel amazing 30 minutes later, that's a clue that your body's like, thank you for these minerals, right? Like if you take that's how I was one time when I was really B12 deficient and I didn't realize it. And I took a B12 and it was and I was just, my head was on the table, not functioning. Literally 1 hour later, it was like someone plugged my batteries back in and I came back online and I was like, oh, that's my body's telling me something. Symptoms are the way. It's like my kids were asking me, cause my third child, he cried a lot in the car and he didn't as a baby, just scream. And my older kids were like, why did he do that? I said, well, that's how he communicated. He couldn't verbalize what was making him uncomfortable. So he just cried. Our symptoms are our body's way of crying, for help. Hey, I have a headache. Well, that's not the problem. That's the results of the problem. I fatigue. That's not the problem. That's the results of the problem. I have anxiety. That's not the problem. That's the results of the problem. And and I think so many of us that are type A driven, we ignore it because I don't have time to deal with that. Nope. I don't have time to do I got to do this thing over here. And so if we had listened and addressed that communication of symptoms earlier on, we wouldn't have gotten, and by we, I'm really talking about myself too here, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are and been so depleted, right? But we ignore it because we're too busy, we're too stressed out, we're too overwhelmed. And then we end up not addressing, and then those things that were simmering for years all of a sudden explode and they become really big deals.
Yeah, I would say the type A personality thing, I've said this actually a million times, it's so overrepresented in this. I don't even want to call it a community because that makes it seem like you want to be a part of it. But the chronic disease community, I'll use the phrase right now. And it's no wonder, right? Because again, that's just a personality that is kind of driven by this sympathetic state. So it's not that that's causal. It's one of the many contributing factors in this slew of stuff that we're talking about today. So it's of course, we're the people that are going to see this first. It's amazing to me when I still see people that are my age or a little bit older that I maybe went to high school with. Because now, late 20s, getting into early 30s, the stuff that they're able to do, they could still go out and drink twice on the weekend, and they're working the full-time job or whatever. I'm like, if I drank the amount of alcohol that you drank one time, I would feel like hell. And I'm in the best place of health that I've probably ever been, which is crazy to say. And you're still doing that. But, that you could tell they're just more people that are go with the flow. If I ask them what their goals are for the next 5 years, they're like, bro, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I'm not making fun of it, but if I ask Becca your goals, I know you could lay them out and certainly I can do the same. And I like that. That makes me comfortable and their personality and way of living makes them comfortable. There's pros and cons to both. So, it's not bad to be type A because they're also some of the best clients because they'll do all this stuff.
Right.
But sometimes it's that personality that gets us there, which makes me want to talk about a kind of bigger concept here. So when people are coming to you in this burnout, there's usually a lot of things, unfortunately, that have happened. I mean, they might be just trying to get by at the job. They might have spent a lot of money on all this stuff, and we got to do the functional lab testing and all these things. So I don't even know if this is something you directly offer, but how do you support them or help them with the emotional side that is inevitably going to be a part of their healing journey because they're usually beaten down quite a bit, again, to be in this state of burnout?
Yeah. Burnout is usually coupled with high stress feelings and overwhelm. It's kind of just this trifecta. And so one of the things we do is we start with low-hanging fruit. Foundations. You can do all the lab testing you want, but if you're not addressing your foundations, it's not going to work. So we start with really simple things to do that take just a few minutes of time. If I tell someone that you have to spend 2 hours a day doing XYZ, they're going to look at me like I'm a crazy person. And so it's early morning sunlight without glasses or contacts. It's an early morning walk. Ideally, you're outside in the sunlight with that early morning walk. It's eating breakfast. It's sleep hygiene. It's doing some somatic movement. You can just YouTube somatic movement and get all sorts of ideas. And then there's so many different modalities for trauma relief, for vagus nerve support, humming and gargling, free, easy, takes a minute or two, support your vagus nerve, support your nervous system. If someone's coming in with a lot of trauma, like childhood trauma or, something they've experienced that's super big. I have my people that my experts on my list that I refer out to for like that expert trauma. So it's, it's something like NLP, emotion code, EFT, tapping. There's so many modalities out there nowadays that, like, for me, I hate talk therapy. I won't do it. It's not going to happen. I love emotion code. I love like Reiki, like energy work. I personally have a lot of stuck trauma that I'm dealing with right now. And so there's so many options nowadays that people have access to. Now, what I typically do with people is we work on rest and play. We work on habits. We work on identity. There's that idea that in order to, you have to do the things to be the healthy person, but that's actually reverse. You have to identify as a healthy person to do the things. And so we work on identity. We work on why, what are the roadblocks into you caring for yourself? There's that stupid saying that I hate, we pour out of ourselves to serve others. No, you are not a cup or a pitcher to pour out of. You are a serving bowl, and rest and play is literally self-care. And it's placing rest and play activities in your bowl. You fill up your bowl and you serve people from the overflow. And so when we think about when someone's stressed and overwhelmed and exhausted, what are the first two things to go? It's rest and it's play. Because they're too busy, too overwhelmed. They become like a racehorse with blinders on, like only like tunnel vision. I'm so stressed. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so burnt out. I'm so right? But those rest and especially the play activities, which looks different for everybody, are the very things to bring yourself out of that overwhelmed state. People like, I'm like, what did you used to do for fun before you got so stressed out and exhausted and overwhelmed? I used to paint. I used to have a standing coffee date with my best friend. I used to whatever. And now I just hermit and I come home and I doom scroll, Facebook or whatever, instead of actively participating in rest and play activities. I find for myself that play is more beneficial than rest. It's easier for me to rest than it is play. I can sit in the recliner and chill and read a book for 30 minutes, but like actively creating those play moments in my week, being proactive is super important for me. And play could be anything from a dance party with the kids to browsing home goods. I love home goods. It's fun. Or it doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be time consuming. It can literally be putting on like your favorite. I love rage music, sometimes like heavy metal, like raw, and like literally like just flinging about the living room and acting like a crazy person for the length of that song. Like it's fun. And so I think, when people are like, it's kind of like when you can think about a million restaurants you want to go to. And then someone says, hey, Ev, where should we go eat? And you go, I don't know. Right. Same with rest and play activities. I encourage my clients to every morning check in with themselves. Do I need a low energy task, a medium energy task, a high energy task today? What would be really supportive of me? And they create a self-care buffet. So they already have a pre-written list of low energy, medium energy, and high energy rest or play activities. And they check in with themselves. And so they put on their bathroom mirror or their closet or their fridge. And they say, okay, today I'm going to schedule in this. And there's that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
No one's sitting around eating bonbons waiting for some self-care. No, you have to be proactive and you have to plan it in to your daily and weekly schedule. And so many people are like, I don't have time for self-care. I don't have time. Well, you know what probably is why you don't have time? Because you're over functioning. You're solving everyone's problems. You're managing everyone's emotions. You're a people pleaser. You are not allowing other people to take on their own consequences. You're trying to control other people's perception of you. And so we tend to be over functioning. And when you are over functioning for everybody else, by nature, you're under functioning for yourself. So creating better boundaries is the best way to get time, energy, and motivation for coping, which is this self-care. Like, how do you cope? Like, what's your favorite coping strategy of like as far as a rest or play activity? Like, what is your go-to that just always makes you feel amazing?
Well, sometimes I leave a little more pissed than I went, but pickleball is definitely one of my main ones. And, I'm having fun, but I'm also being serious. It's probably one of the best ones because, you can turn that up or down. Like if I've done competitions and tournaments with it. So yes, it is actually a sport, contrary to popular belief. And you do have to actually put some effort in.
Oh, it's huge here. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. To compete at a decent level, no, you have to put some energy in. But at the same time, if I just need to chill out for a little bit, I can go to a rec play and choose a level maybe one below what I should be at. And now I don't have to do the same level of exertion. I kind of can just chill out and do my thing. And this is funny because people, especially since I talk so much about business on here, I think people mistake how I operate with certain things. One of the habits that I haven't perfectly maintained it, but I've done it pretty damn well over the last almost 6-7 years now, is basically the last 2 to 3 hours of the night, I always do whatever I want. And when I say whatever I want, I mean, and I hate even admitting this, but it works for me. Like, I fill my brain sometimes with junk on YouTube. I'll occasionally play video games. Like, I will just do whatever I want unrestricted. Now, I'm still doing this with like my red light tinted computer, right? So it's still the biohacking version of this, but I have found that there's a recipe for everyone. You know, some people aren't going to be able to handle, because if you take that off 16, what is that? Basically 12, 13 hours of engaged activity each day. Dude, that's me. I like that. I think it's fun. I want to go all day. I enjoy the things that I do. And I never sit there. I'm not doing 13 hours of podcasting today, right? I had meetings, I had masterminds, speaking gigs. I'll do, not today, but in general, right? You know, I do that. So mixing all that in works for me. But like, yeah, that's how I'll rest, is one of those things. Like, I'll do that. And then something that I never even thought about, but Maddie and I, my wife, have been applying this recently. And this has been tough for me, but it works, is our pastor, who is a nut type A guy, just like you can imagine. A lot of them are, not all of them, but many of them are. He talked about, you know, acknowledging the Sabbath and actually taking a full day off. And I'm like, oh, I don't do that. And then where he challenged us, not directly, he was speaking to the whole congregation, but he said, you know, a lot of you have faith in tithing and you trust God with that. Why don't you trust him with this? Now, not everyone has to resonate with that. That's fine. But it was funny for me because I don't tithe literally to a church, but I do donate 10% of everything that I make, because I do have faith that that is the right thing to do. And I'm like, how funny is it that I don't have a problem doing it with that one, but I don't have the faith that if I stop working for a day, you know, things are just going to crumble. And that one's been challenging for me, and it's been tough to apply that. That's only been like a last 3-4 month thing, but giving myself a full day where it's like, no, we're not doing anything work related. I do find myself becoming more productive, and dude, you just come back with better ideas. So you're just more efficient in general.
Yeah. I mean, I took yesterday off I went to physical therapy because I keep ripping ligaments off my joints. So that's a whole nother story. I went and had coffee with a friend, and I went and got a massage. And when I came home, I took a nap. Like, I just in the middle of the week, like, granted, I'm the boss, so I can set my schedule, you know, and so, like, you know, but within any week, I think, whether it's a Sunday, and I love Sundays for just reflecting and being still and taking that time. But maybe, you know, with your job and your profession, maybe you're an ER doctor and you can't take Sundays off or something, right? Then pick another day and pick some sort of time to be able to decompress. What I find, like, keeps people in the cycle of burnout is being overscheduled and not enough time buffer. Time buffer is such a simple concept that can be a game changer for people. So, like, for me, if I have a day where I get up at 6, get my 3 kids on the bus, you know, breakfast, that's like 2 hours between 6 and 8 between when I get up and when the last one gets on the bus for school. And then I work all day, and then, like, they get off, and then I'm like going straight from work into dinner, going straight from dinner into like homework and reading for the kids and bedtime. And then I'm so tired that I fall into bed. There was no downtime and there was no buffer. I went from one thing to another thing to another thing. And that is the fastest way to send myself into burnout and into overwhelm. So now what I try to do better at is, you know, making sure I have some time between when I finish my workday and when I have to start dinner. Whether I just sit in my chair and read for 30 minutes, whether I go on a walk, whether I like go on a drive with the windows down, whatever that looks like, right? And then I try to also give myself some time at the end after the kids are in bed. Like, sometimes, like during the summer was hard because we're all just staying up doing things and kids are just getting in bed late. But during the school year, it's easier for me to do is, you know, they get in bed. And like, so last night, I listened to a meditation and I did some stretching and some somatic movements, you know, hip opening exercises. A lot of my chronic pain tends to be when I'm laying flat. Okay. It's a whole nother story. So it's like prepping my body for better sleep. That's part of my downtime or decompression, right? And you know what? Sometimes I sit there and I do scroll random videos on TikTok or whatever because they're funny and I like to laugh, you know? And so it's like, I think we can get into this like, oh no, we have to be doing all this biohacking all the time. But like, you know what? Spend some time scrolling, watching dumb animal videos on TikTok. It's great, or whatever that is. Now, if that's all you're doing, it's probably not going to be super helpful. But I think having that balance is It's totally fine. Like how you say, you want to play video games or whatever, great. Figure out what works for you. That's the thing. What works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, doesn't necessarily work for somebody else.
Well, and that's the thing that we'll all learn, if you guys end up being a client of an FDN or you are an FDN yourself, is like this all is with the disclaimer that you kind of have to know your body and be aware. Like, there's teenagers right now and probably adults as well, but teenagers that are scrolling for 5 hours a day and they're not aware of how that makes them feel. You and I, just because of the work that we've done with this space, I'm very aware of when I go from the point of, okay, this made me feel good to, and it's funny and it is just playful and recreational versus like, okay, no, this is now hurting me and it's just like stripping my nutrients in my brain to a degree that I don't want. There's a balance to all of this stuff. And that's what I found too. It's like, I'm just not anywhere near as productive at night. So even though, yes, our type A selves would love to keep going, I find, all right, my most productive hours are in the morning for sure. That's when I do the hardest work. Then I get the stuff like meetings or podcasts that I could do all the time because I like it later in the day. Like right now, it's already 4:00. Well, I've been going since 6 basically. So there's plenty of time to do this stuff. And then at the end of the day, it's like, even if I was working, I'm operating at like 20%. So I might as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. My brain literally shuts down around 4:45. That's just when it does. Like it shuts down at 4:45. And I have done, things like, I have to finish this task. I have to finish this report. I have to finish XYZ. And you know what happens when I push through? I mean, I know I get this over like full body, like my brain shutting down. Like I get like all of a sudden this is brain fog and just my body melts into like a big puddle. And when I push through that to try to do it, like my work is not effective. It's not productive. It's not creative. Like it is just like, it's not good work. And so I find that I actually do better work if I just stop, cut it off, take a break, finish for the day. And when I get back to it the next day, instead of it taking me another hour and a half that evening, because I'm trying to push, it takes 20 minutes, right? Because I'm so much more effective. And I think, different people do have better times to work. Like my best brain thinking is like 9 to 1. That is like my good thinking. I don't think real great at 6 a.m. I certainly don't think real good at 6 o'clock. So, understanding those, how your body works, how your brain works. I also think, when we get into just our innate design, like how we function, my innate design, I am not designed to work 60 hours a week. And when I try to do that, I go down fast, right? And so some people like me, maybe I need more rest and play. Someone like you can go longer throughout the day from like 6 to 6 and be totally fine, right? But then you have your 3 hours of doing whatever you want. And that's also, I think, a factor of lifestyle. I have 3 kids.
Yeah, I was about to say,
I would love to be able to have 3 hours every night to do whatever I want. I was listening to that going like, wow, what's that like, right? But, I'm 45 years old. I have 3 kids. One of them's a teenager, involved in all the activities, right? And so it's also going to look differently seasonally. Like, where are you at in your life? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? But it doesn't, the point is, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, do you have kids? Do you not? Do you work out of the home? Do you not? Like, whatever it is you can slow down enough, check in with yourself enough, pay attention enough, listen to your body, and engineer your life to win. So many times we're not being proactive. Our health is happening to us, right? But you can make very small shifts in your lifestyle that create this capacity for you to engineer your life to win. And again, it doesn't have to take 1,000 years or like half the day. It doesn't have to be ridiculously expensive either. I think a lot of people think, or like the whole YOLO, like, oh yeah, day at the spa. Great. I love a day at the spa every now and then, but that's not what we're talking about. So what I'm talking about when I say self-care. Self-care is, what are the daily things you do to support your body and support your mind? Like, what are they? Do them, right?
Becca, this is proof that I love talking to you because I think I never, ever unintentionally go over. And I'm like, wow, we are a little over. So I want to get to some important stuff, though, about your business. So one, let's take the time to do this. Can we, because you've worked with a lot of clients now, to the degree that you're able to share, I would love to hear about, specifically with burnout, someone that has come to you, end of the rope. They're like, holy crap, I feel like crap. I don't know what to do here. And because of the things that you taught them and showed them, you were able to help them. I'd love to hear a story of transformation.
Yeah, no, I had a client that came to me not functioning, had several kids, was a business owner, and she came to me very depressed because she had all these goals and dreams for her life, for her business, and she couldn't get off the couch. Just not functioning. Really intelligent person, had a really interesting history of some drug use, some kind of going down some paths of destruction in the body, and it really had gotten clean, had made all of these beautiful shifts for her life in order to create a better life for herself and her family. But she got to a place where she just wasn't functioning. And she had mold. She had extreme amounts of heavy metals. She was eating foods that were driving massive inflammation for her. She just had a lot of those hidden healing opportunities in the body that we tested for. We were able to create some very personalized protocols for her. And over the course, and it didn't happen overnight. I mean, she had a lot to bring back into balance. But eventually, like, she's now like building her empire. I mean, she's got her product. She creates a specific product, and she's got it, all over stores, farmers markets. She's like big into like the business development. She's created other businesses. Like she went from being so depleted and non-functioning and just wishing she could have this life to she's creating the life she wanted, and she's getting to enjoy that life. So many times we create this life we wanted, but we're so depleted we can't enjoy that life we created. There's what's the point of creating this beautiful life and you don't have the capacity to enjoy it, right? And sometimes it's big things like mold or a parasite or significant nutrient deficiencies. And sometimes it's something really simple. I had a client who was, her anxiety was so bad that she wasn't functioning, like, and bad, like almost suicidal. And she had prided herself on eating one of those giant buckets of spinach every week to get healthy, go in the gym, all this stuff. And through a series of events that's too long to kind of share within like a minute, but we discovered that she had histamine issues. She was genetically was predisposed to not breaking down histamine. She's eating all these high histamine foods. And so within a week of her going low histamine, just shifting her diet, her anxiety that had like slayed her for 4 years or 5 years was gone. Gone. Right. So sometimes it's big things, sometimes it's little things that can make a big impact. But that's the beauty of the lab test, is you don't know what you don't know. And so many people are like, I'm going to follow this guru. I'm going to follow this guru. I'm going to like, this is the only one diet for everyone. This is the only way to exercise. Everybody should be fasting. Nobody should be fasting. Right. There's all these like big ideas out there, and I hate them all, because nothing about health should be general. It all should be specific. And when you work in that specific manner, like, it's specific to you, but we're also working non-specifically in the body, right? So it's kind of this combo approach. It's amazing how quickly people can feel better.
Yeah, it is cool. I love what you said about the first one in particular, just like getting your life back. That's the one thing I am actually beyond thankful for with my health issues, especially at a young age, and being entrepreneurial and type A and all that good stuff, is I realized something that many of these people don't seem to learn until, they made $1 billion and then they lose it all health-wise, is it is fun to make money. It is fun to have goals. I'm all for it. But man, if you don't have the health to enjoy all this stuff, none of it matters at all. You got to balance it. So Becca, where can people find you if they would like to go from being burned out to having Becca level energy? I would like to know where. So where can they find you?
So my brand is Holistic Obsession, because I am literally obsessed with all things holistic. And you can just go to holisticobsession.com. There's buttons all over the place that says, book a free connection call. Whether we work together or not, I love connecting with people. And oftentimes it's the first conversation where someone feels seen, heard, believed. And it's always my goal, whether we work together or not, is that you leave that conversation with hope. You leave that conversation maybe with some ideas of what may be potentially going on. And so it's just it's a time to share your story. And just on like, symptom clusters, I can kind of, I'm like, my wheels start spinning. And so that free connection call is just a great place to start. And you can find lots of information about me, my business, what I do on holisticobsession.com. You can follow me on Instagram at my holistic obsession. You can look at me find me on Facebook. My business page is Holistic Obsession. You can kind of find me a little bit everywhere. I'm on YouTube. So I think my YouTube handle is actually Becca Kyle FDNP. So I'm a little bit everywhere, but I often find that first initial, just no stress conversation is the best place to start.
Well, Becca, thank you so much for coming on and just bringing the energy. Like always, you're one of the very few guests to be on 3 times. I think there's only like 5 people that have done that. So it is a privilege to have you. And I hope you take it as a compliment that we've loved bringing you on this much.
I enjoy it every time. I love talking to you earlier. We're like, we could talk about this all day. It's just fun. It's just fun. I love it.
All right. You guys know where to find her, holisticobsession.com. If you want to go from burned out to high energy like Becca.